Have you ever wondered how to stay up to date with the new trends in technology? How often it's too often to switch jobs as a developer? How to work properly with a mentor? Why it's critical for you to have certifications in today's tech landscape? And what could happen to you if your AWS keys fall into the wrong hands? In this video, I have the chance to ask all those questions and more to Nathan Webster. He's the principal consultant at a company called Daemon, located in the UK. He's worked in cloud computing for over a decade. Now, if you want to follow him or contact him, I'll put in the description below his LinkedIn handle, but that is nathanwebster.dot.me. So let's get started with the interview. Kind of explain to us what's your current role so that everyone kind of understands what you do on a daily basis.
I'm a principal consultant. Work for a company called Daemon. We're a British-based tech consultancy, and we work in a number of fields. So my speciality is in the cloud DevOps space. That's how we obviously met. But as a business, we also do engineering, do performance engineering. We do data, AI, ML as a sort of like growing niche. For my day to day, really, I'm responsible for working with our clients. We work with a number of large companies in Europe. We're starting to branch out. We're doing some stuff in Canada and the States, and we work with those companies to take them on cloud migration, digital transformation journeys, really. So it's my job to help them with that cloud journey.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say because that's what everybody wants to do. They want to be in the cloud. So that's kind of your I wouldn't say your niche, but that's your role in your company is to get people from kind of do you do a lot of on-premise data centers and moving them to the cloud, or is it other sort of things?
We have a real mixed bag. So some clients will be at the beginning of that journey and they'll still be on premise, and they want to adopt the cloud and start using things like the managed services or taking advantage of the scalable infrastructure or anything like that the cloud brings. Other customers will be uh, they'll have their cloud environments already, but maybe have not done a great job of it, or they need some help in shifting that along. So maybe they're going from classic EC2 to a Kubernetes container type world, and we help them with that journey. One client is looking at moving from the cloud back on premise. So
Really? That's
there's that as well.
and then in your role, so you spend a lot more time managing code, or do you manage people too, or is it a mix of both?
Yeah, principal roles in our company are a very hybrid sort of role.
Okay.
So technically, we can work on a project. I'm full time on a project at the moment. Very hands on. We do a lot of work with the Terraform and implementing and building out infrastructure as code. And then occasionally we work across a couple of projects, and we're more of a sort of guiding light for some of our other engineers, right? So we're helping shape from a bit more of a higher level up and working more with customer management to like develop a roadmap or whatever that is, architecture planning, that sort of stuff. So it's a very mixed bag. That's what I love about it.
Well, it sounds like it. So you worked yourself up into a pretty high prestigious role, some would say. And then my question kind of is for the people that are out there listening on the YouTube world, like we see you in this position now, but obviously you didn't start in this position. So can you kind of walk us through your career path from not knowing a single thing about computers to now being the big boss man at your company?
Not the big boss man, but yeah, sure. So where did I start? So I was at university, studied computer science. More of a case of I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had some good advice, really, which was just do something you enjoy at university and figure it out later. So computer science, enjoyed it. And then started out really in the industry with system administration jobs like desktop support, provisioning laptops. And I always remember my first job. Within the first week, they asked me to go and patch a cable in the server room and took down the entire call center. Like, first week. So it was only up from there.
I was going to say that's a great way to break into the industry. I love it.
Yeah. Take the whole a lot of phones went offline. From there, worked for a couple of other companies, and then the first real exposure to the cloud was for a holiday sort of vacation. few Americans,
Mm-hmm.
like a travel provider, basically. So supermarket for holidays and things. And we had a very peaky business. So it
Mm-hmm.
was, January. So you'd have Christmas, deathly quiet.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Boxing Day, 26th of December, the traffic would be one of the busiest days of the year because
Really?
everyone would get through Christmas and then just be like, right, holidays, what are we doing? And yeah, it's crazy times. So that suited the cloud really well. And this was back in 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So a long time ago. And we moved over to the cloud, EC2 based. There wasn't many managed services around. I think we had we had managed our own databases because it was Microsoft stack and there
Okay.
wasn't any RDS or anything. Um, yeah, learn a lot there. So yeah, lots of hand cranked cloud scaling going on. Literally just sat at a computer pressing up, 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 down, down, down. That's how I used to work.
That is the old version of the auto scaling groups, I assume then,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Just call me autoscaler.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, from there worked with bigger and bigger companies. We went through. There was a definite phase in the industry of migrating out of Rackspace into AWS.
Uh-huh.
So I did one of those projects for a big education provider called Kaplan. We sort of worked in their sort of global business, trying to push the cloud and automation and things.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, from there just sort of stepped up really through different roles. So lots of like lead roles. I always enjoy being hands-on as
Uh-huh.
well as having a foot in the door of being able to shape the strategy and roadmap and direction. So finding those nice little hybrid roles was good for me. Um, I've done a few of those, and then I went into a period of contracting, which is,
Mm-hmm.
basically freelancing, come in for a set project, for a set sort of thing, set up my own business,
Uh-huh.
and that went well for 3 years or so, until I took a contract with my current company, Daemon,
Mm-hmm.
and they finally ground me down and got me back as a permanent employee. So
Well, very cool. That's an amazing journey. One thing you did mention on there is contracting. I know a lot of people always think about that idea where you see freelance or you get to be your own boss or do all these other sort of like buzzword type things. How do you compare contracting to like a full-time position, really? Which do you prefer better? And what are some pros and cons, kind of?
Um, so yeah, contracting's great in a sense that you do get that freedom, and you do. I think I've spoken to a few friends of mine who've done the same, um, as well as myself. Is you think differently, you think a lot more entrepreneurial, and you're thinking about how you can identify new opportunities and things, and really grow. And I think that just comes with owning your own business and like having to do the paperwork. You're like, actually, I need to do something about this and step it up, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, the downside for me was like I really buy into people and the sort of work and companies and things that I work for, and
Hmm.
I just didn't do that as much as a freelancer. I found
Okay.
it was very transactional. It was very you're more of a resource to work on what we're doing. You don't get to help shape things as much, even though I could probably add value. And maybe that's
Yeah.
just some of the businesses I worked with, but yeah, it just didn't really sit right with me. So yeah, when Daemon offered me a role for the second time, they offered me in the first week, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
no, no, come on. And then we had a chat, and yeah, never looked back since. I love it.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's good for any for all
Excuse me.
those people out there thinking about some sort of contractor roles, because I know I get those, and I'm sure a lot of other software engineers do, where you get contacted on LinkedIn all the time, and they say, "Oh, we got
Yeah,
a contractor role, be your own boss." And you're like, "Will I really be my own boss?" Or
it's good. Like
uh,
some friends of mine love it, and they've always done it, and it really suits their. They enjoy more of the head down. Give me
uh-huh,
some work to do. I'm really technically excellent. Um, I don't want to get involved in maybe the politics. I
uh-huh,
don't want to get involved with the meetings. I don't want to. I just want to code, or I want to build platforms. Or I want to do the technical stuff and really get good at that. And if I suppose if that's your mindset, it's a bit more of a good fit, really.
oh,
Whereas I think I'm more other people and sitting in meetings and helping shape things.
awesome. That's
Maybe.
actually, I was going to say that's actually a very good tip for people out there. So let's kind of move forward in this, and I'm curious, in your role, what are some of the hardest parts of it?
Ooh, good question. Um, I think staying up to date with new technology is always a challenge, right? And I think that regardless of where you are in your career, tech moves quickly. And I've seen in my sort of experience and working in various companies, I've seen people who, refuse to, they don't embrace that challenge of
Mm-hmm.
staying current and staying fresh and always iterating on their skill set. And it can happen very quickly, but you can become, your skill set can become obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be on this path of continuous learning. And obviously, the older you get, you generally sort of have less time, kids or whatever, wife
Uh-huh.
and family and whatever that is. So staying on top of that is a challenge. Now,
Uh-huh.
at Daemon, we're obviously aware of that. We're a consultancy, we go into businesses and they have different technology stacks all the time. So we have to get pretty good at that.
Mm-hmm.
But we also try and make time for our people to do that. And I think that's really important from any business, really. You need to make that time for your staff to learn and to figure out a different way and have that space to sort of breathe. So
In fact, that
um,
was my next question I was going to ask. Is it because it's just part of our job is that we have to spend some time keeping up on the newest technology as things, for example, in AWS change and there's new services coming out or they upgrade services and there's a new and better way to do it. How much time do you think is required to, like you said, people at your company do get that time to stay up to date on technology? How much, like, what's the balance between getting stuff done at work versus staying up to date on new tech?
it depends where you are, right, in your journey. And I've mentored people who have been thrown in at the deep end. So one of my mentees was working for a company, and he was a traditional on-premise data center engineer, and suddenly was thrown into the world of AWS and I think some other like more obscure cloud providers.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like starting from scratch. So what he did was reach out to me for mentoring, right? And
Yeah.
that's similar to how we got to know each other. Um, there's definitely those phases of um, yeah, like really in at the deep end and need to bootstrap my learning very quickly.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think a lot of time, sort of generally, you need to keep up to date with tech and read tech news and read, things like Register and I read TechCrunch and just try and stay aware of the macro trends that are going on.
Uh-huh.
And then try and carve out opportunities for you to develop and like actually try new stuff. So an example that I can give, like recently, I wanted to learn a bit more about serverless, and I really wanted to dig into. There's the AWS SAM framework, or there's the serverless framework, and what those look like, and how to build a serverless app from the ground up. So, found a little project at our company. We went through a big rebrand, and one of the outputs of that rebrand was about like profile pictures and what they should look like. Um, so we built a serverless app integrated with a Slack bot. So I got to play with the Slack API.
Uh-huh.
Lots of development, lots of sort of changes there and learning opportunities. And just creating those little projects on the side is actually a really good way to force yourself to learn. I think if you sit there and do tutorials, it's great, but not always real, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't having that real output and real project is a bit more useful in my opinion.
Well, actually, let me follow up with a question on that. So, if you're working on new technologies, in the case of a Slack bot or any new services you're running, how do you know, since you're discovering this technology the first time, how can you kind of ensure that you're learning the best practices right from the beginning versus making them big? Like I do this a lot where I make a big mess, it works, and then I have to figure out what from there I have to kind of refactor to make it good.
Yeah, I don't think you can, right? I
Uh-huh.
think I made a mess. I played with local stack. I got loads. So local stack is like a local development AWS environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent ages getting this working. And it was so far away from what I set out, but it was part of that journey, right? So you're
Yeah.
starting to figure out what a real world experience looks like. And then you get halfway down, you realize you need to pay for like the professional license and you don't want to pay for that. So you just drop all that code, park that for another time. We'll come back to local stack another time, but it's
Uh-huh.
it's part of the journey, and it's you should embrace embrace that journey, I think, and just make a mess, right? Start
Yeah.
somewhere. Sometimes I've had, blank page syndrome is a real thing. Writer's block, right? It's by just creating something, starting, it will grow, and you can add to it and you can iterate rather than trying to come up with perfect at first.
I think that's fantastic advice because I know a lot of people who don't want to do it unless they're doing it perfect the very first time. And I feel like there's a lot of time spent wasting trying to get it absolutely like crystal clear, best practice the very first time. So I'm glad there are other
Yeah.
people like me that like to make a mess first and then figure it out after that.
Yeah. The
Uh,
problem is if you make a mess and then it goes live. So in more of a real professional environment,
uh-huh,
if you do it, you have to be aware that as soon as something works, generally people will want to get it live.
uh-huh.
So just bear that in mind.
That's a good tip. So it sounds like you're pretty happy in your role. And so a lot of people out there kind of have to, I guess, weigh things out in their own mental algorithm, how they want to select a job, because it seems like the job market's still pretty good right now. So when you're weighing out, hey, I want to go here, I want to do that, what are some factors that you put into the decision making?
Um, I mean, obviously the last job I took was Daemon,
Uh-huh.
and the big thing that pulled me in really was the people, so culture and who you're going to be working with and how they do things. I think that's as you go through, I've been working in the industry for 12 years, whatever,
Uh-huh.
and I think you realise that the sort of general business and technical challenges are very similar. Obviously, different specific requirements, but the sort of major trends are very similar, right? We need to get
Uh-huh.
to the cloud, or we're spending too much in the cloud, or whatever. We
Uh-huh.
can't serve customers quickly enough. Um, but choosing a company based on the sort of people you're going to go on that journey with is so much more important, right? Because that you can spend so much time in your life with those people. Majority of your days with your colleagues, especially now we're all remote as well.
Mhm.
It's even more important, right? You need to be able to build relationships virtually, which is a hard thing to do, like genuine relationships. So, I found a Daemon for me that was a really good fit. Company culture is a really good fit for me as well. We're very social. We try and bring people together, even though we're remote first. We social events. We have a big festival. Like there's all that sort of stuff that I don't see other companies doing, and it just shows like the sort of real focus that they have is not just about profits and such.
Mhm.
It's about looking after people, right?
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, because there's so many jobs out there, and you have no idea. Like, am I just going to essentially be a coding bot all day long, just sitting there writing bits, or am I? In your case, I like the idea that you look more at the people because you're right. We're going to spend well, we're going to get to. In fact, I'll ask now. How many hours of work or how many hours a week do you work? I'm just curious.
So we bill customers based on like 8 hour days,
Okay.
so 5 days a week.
Uh-huh.
But I put in extra hours into personal development and work and things, but it doesn't feel like work.
Uh-huh.
You need to. It's such a cliche, but you need to really love what you do, right?
Okay.
If otherwise it feels like hard work all the time. So putting in those extra hours into learning or doing some other stuff or
Mhm.
writing presentations for an engineering community day or interviews or whatever that is outside of that client work is important. But um, yeah, it varies. It
Oh,
varies.
and I just the reason I ask is I know there are some companies that are like, we got to have work-life balance. We want everyone out of here at 8 hours. And there's others that will happily just throw you in a room, throw some coffee in, and say, get me as many bits as you can in a day. And if you work 12 or 15 hours a day, that's fine with them. So
Well, that's cool though, right? It goes
yeah.
through phases, and I think I think, I mean, this is a massive generalization, but most people don't mind those phases.
Hmm.
So if you are on a massive project that you've really enjoyed being part of, and you see it and you hear about games productions, they have those leading up to game releases like crazy weeks, but everyone's in it together, and you're with the
Uh-huh.
people, and it feels like you've got that momentum and that energy, and it's like a really enjoyable time. I've had some great times where we, putting those projects live, and it's all exciting, and it's all that hard work is coming to fruition, right? And I don't mind. Like I really thrive off that sort of time. But there has to be a balance. You can't do that for all year, right? You're just
Oh
going
my
to burn
God,
out.
no,
So
no, you,
it's all about balance, right? And it's important to have a life outside of sitting in front of a computer.
oh,
It's something we're all guilty of is spending too much time in front of a screen. So
oh, absolutely. I know that feeling. I'm down here in my basement and I spend a lot of time in my cave. So I know what you're talking about. Well, so some of the people out there probably listening going, I'm working my job. How can I kind of move up in the industry, move to a bigger, more prestigious, higher paying job? Because everybody out there always seems so, there always seems to be someone making more money than you. So do you have any kind of recommendations, tips, or hacks for people to kind of accelerate their career progression?
um, yeah, I commit to learning, commit to building relationships with people. The obvious ones are obviously, work hard and get promoted, right?
Yeah.
And get pay rises. But the sort of real tricks are to really invest in good relationships with good people because you go with them. So I've seen that a number of times, and it's sort of how Daemon as a business has grown over the last 15 years is organically because
Mhm.
we come in, we do a good job. So if we take it at a company level, we work with someone, CTO at a company. We do an excellent job. They know and trust us, and we have a very good relationship. They move on to CEO of another company. They take us with us,
Mhm.
and that's a really good way of your personal career of doing that. If you find good leaders to work with, or you come across people that inspire you, or really want to be like that person, we all have those people, then really get to know them and show them what you can do, and get stuck in and show them, and then that's going to be a really good part of your network, right? um Generally, like I've in my career moving jobs a little bit more frequently than I would have expected, I think has led to quicker pay rises and moves up the rank. Now, that's not always possible depending on where you live. I was very lucky. We're in London. There's lots of busy IT and exciting things going on, lots of projects and things. So it was always I was in on the cloud early as well. So it was always like quite um, a lot of opportunity.
So
But take those opportunities, right?
I was going to say, moving between companies, that is probably the most popular way to move up in the world. What is too frequently to you? Like, should it be every other year, every couple, like every 5 years? What is a good cadence, or at least how often is too often?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, actually. I've interviewed a lot of people, and I think if I look at a CV, about 3 years in IT it feels about right. I
Uh-huh.
think minimum of three, 2 to 3, mixed in with some short-term contracts. So if you're doing contracting, that's very different. But as soon as I see if we're hiring a contractor,
Yeah.
um, or I'm interviewing a contractor and they have moved jobs every 3 to 6 months, which is typically the length of a freelance contract in where we are. That raises red flags because I'm like,
Mhm.
well, why are they not? Why are they not being extended? Why are they not sticking around? Is their work not good enough? For a permanent employee, if you're moving jobs every year or 10 months or whatever, then I'll ask outright,
Uh,
why? um, and there has to be good justification, maybe personal reasons, or you move cities, or whatever that is. Companies go out of business, um, and people get caught up in that. But if it's a repeated pattern, not a good thing. So one or twice, short-term jobs are fine, but don't let it be a pattern.
you definitely see that from a hiring manager perspective. You look at them and go, okay, your last 5 jobs, they're all average about a year. If I'm going to
Yeah.
hire you, bring you on, we're going to train you, we're going to make sure you're up to speed. Am I going to lose you in a year or two? So I could see that being a definite concern.
Exactly. And it's a legitimate, businesses are going to invest. You want them to invest in you. You want them to give you opportunity. And it takes time to onboard into a business.
Mhm.
I moved into a few contracts, and it takes a good 3 months to really understand what's going on and being able to really make a difference. Um, and if you then move again, it's like, well, we've wasted all this time and money into trying to bring you as part of our team. So yeah, it's based in like legitimate business reasons, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about this before, and we'll kind of get a little deeper into it. So how to learn stuff quickly. because like there's so many different things out there. We got Kubernetes, Helm, we got Terraform, cloud computing, Ansible, really whatever. Do you have kind of a process that you go through? So if tomorrow you said, oh, we got to put some Helm packages in here or Helm templates, and you're not familiar with it, like what would be your kind of thought process, or how would you get up to speed on that?
Yeah, so for simple, not simple, but for
Yeah.
single bits of things or individual technologies,
Uh-huh.
um, lots of videos like learning resources. So Udemy is a really good resource, right?
Yeah.
I've pushed you down that route a little bit before, and I think that really helps because it's structured learning. You cover all the essentials, and you can take it step by step at your own pace. Um, Reaching out in your network is an important part, and this is again why managing those relationships long term is because you're not the first person to use these technologies, right? So ask
Uh-huh.
people within your company, ask people, right? Don't be afraid, don't pretend that you know everything, because you don't.
Uh,
Nobody does.
That's one thing I like
um
about this career field is if you pretend to know it and then you actually have your first pull request and people are like, what is this? You can tell real quick.
yeah, it's obvious, right?
Mhm.
The Be honest and be open, because people will help you a lot more.
Right.
um Yeah, and documentation is generally, for Helm, go read the docs, go follow the tutorial, start there, and then play with something locally, and just try it and get stuck in. You can really think about overthink it, and you can wait until you're perfect and then do some work. Or you could just do some work and someone can give you some comments, right? Like
Yep.
put a pull request up and ask for some help, right?
Absolutely. In fact, you mentioned this a little bit earlier and talking about it now. In the idea of the mentorship, as someone who would be a mentee and looking for that mentor, like what are some boundaries? Because obviously you can't ask your mentor to do it all for you, but you want to do enough work to show that you're trying, but you also need that help. So, in your past experience, what have you found to be some kind of good traits for a mentee?
um yeah, you've got to be committed. So I've had mentees who just turn up and it's like a class. So once a week we do a call. um and generally that's our like weekly touch point. We spend an hour together covering whatever, and we usually have a structured learning plan. But I had one mentee who was just turn up and unprepared, late, and just clearly like, so tell me about S3. You're like,
Uh-huh.
okay. um, and then you like set a challenge or whatever, and nothing for the next week, and then come. It's just like be involved. If you've got a mentor, they're spending some of their time, and effort, right? And you need to be bought into that mentee mentor relationship,
Mhm.
as you'd expect the mentor to be.
Yes.
Um, it's yeah, put the time in, and do it for a really intense period and then end it, right? So there should always be an end goal. And I don't think like an ongoing long-term mentee relationship is bad in a way, but that shouldn't be a weekly touch point. You maybe catch up once every 6 months, right?
Mhm.
Um, for an intense sort of learning period, very much have a clear goal where you want to head, share that with your mentor, come up with a learning plan, and then really dig in and spend some intense time together.
Oh, very cool. Those are some good tips because I know I've seen a lot of people do exactly what you're talking about, where they have a mentor, someone who's willing to help them learn and help teach them something, and they just don't put in the effort. So, and then surprise, surprise, the mentor doesn't want to help them very much either. Then,
Yeah, it is a really good tool to use for bootstrapping some learning. So
uh-huh.
I'm just about to start working with a new guy, and he's very much open and honest about his challenges. So
Mhm.
I'm sure he won't mind me sharing.
Yeah.
He's a developer, has done lots of development work, but really is missing that platform understanding piece. So he just really wants to spend a couple of months just getting a real quick custom like learning path. So he's like, I could go sit and watch a load of videos, but I don't have time. I've got kids. I need something that's really focused on what I need. So I don't want to, go through videos and only 50% be relevant. I want 100% of it to be relevant,
Mhm.
and that custom sort of mentee mentor relationship can help with that. So
Very cool. On the topic of that, I'm curious. You have a lot of experience. You said you've working for over a decade. Do you ever feel imposter syndrome at all? Do you ever have that moment where you go, "I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm a fraud."
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. But I think that the real secret is everyone feels like that, regardless of what level and what experience. You know, everybody's worked their way up to the positions they're in. Right? Nobody was born a CTO or a CEO and just that was their first job into, except for startup world, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I'd imagine startup world, you feel imposter syndrome even more so. Um, so it's completely natural. And as soon as you remember and just remind yourself that everyone else you're working with is feeling like that, then it sort of goes away. It counteracts that feeling, I think.
Okay, good. So I'm not the only one that feels it. Excellent.
No, just do the best job as well, right?
Yeah.
You just do your best, and that's all anyone can ask for.
Well, perfect. Here's on a slightly different path, especially in AWS, like something that's super popular is people to get all sorts of certifications. There's, practitioner levels, associate levels, professional levels, and there's a wide spectrum of specialities. So, kind of, what are your feelings on that? Because I know you hold a few of them. And are there certain ones you'd recommend people get? Ones people should pass on? Like, what would be a good game plan, especially if someone's going in the AWS world?
Yeah, so I mean, I sort of challenge you to do your cloud practitioner one, right? And then your solutions architect. So have you done that yet?
Taking that
Let's
on
check it.
Monday.
There you go. Right, and I think why it's useful is it gives you like I say that outcome. So you're working towards something tangible. Um, I think it's a really good way to verify what you've learned and really prove to yourself and the industry and whatever, as consultants, it's really useful for our clients to know they're getting certified people because they a bit more trust and a bit more sort of authority comes with that. Um, and it also make sure that we can verify our staff know what they're doing. So yeah, definitely recommend it. AWS, your solutions architect associate is usually a really good entry point. It covers the fundamental services. It covers the sort of how to think about the cloud and how to approach and how to design for the cloud. Um, so that's always a good place to start, and then you can branch off into the relevant ways. If you do more DevOps focused, then into that branch. If you prefer the architecture, then that branch is obviously the professional level, and then specialists. So.
Perfect. Do you have, I guess I've never asked, do you have any of the special certifications at all? Like the networking
Yeah,
or
not yet. I've it's on my plan. So yeah, going down that route next, I think.
okay. One last question about this, and we'll move on to something else. So on the
Okay.
certification stuff, how much time do you actually spend studying? Because I know, like, since I've only been working with AWS for about 7 months now, I don't have as much experience in the actual services. So a lot of the stuff I'm learning, I haven't quite got a chance to touch yet. But I know there are other people who work in this all the time that could probably take the same test in a month's worth of studying. So, kind of, what is your cadence for studying for a new cert?
Well, so I do the solutions architect. I'm the professional level, which is the next level up, and we have to recertify that every 2 years.
Mhm.
And yeah, over COVID, I think they let them expire a little bit later, and I really had to study quite hard to pick up some of the stuff because you don't touch it all. You don't do that development and work with it all. And doing that study actually reminded me of a lot of good practice and things that I could apply in my project. So it was really beneficial. Usually about 4 weeks of intense-ish study, but it's more just understanding um, what's going to be on the exam and really sort of focusing on those areas, and the courses you can get on Udemy are very, very specific for those now. So some of those is just worth the, I don't know, $20 or whatever you pay.
Yeah, because I just bought one. It was on sale. I think that's maybe the only time it'll ever be on sale. Is that right? Or
Yeah, I think that's how it works, right? Yeah.
perfect.
I can't believe there was a sale.
Oh my gosh, 50% off. Udemy, what are you doing? Uh, all right, let's move kind of into cloud computing here. We talked a little bit about it. So there's a million AWS services. Well, first of all, have you ever had any work experience in any of the other cloud providers, or have you been AWS from the beginning?
Yeah, purely AWS.
Okay.
That's my bag.
Okay, sounds good. So from that, there's trillion services. If someone's going to start learning a service like from the ground up, we've talked about some ways. Are there any other ideas or concepts that people should know if they want to learn something new? Say you want to learn how S3 buckets work, or how I don't know what would be another good service that's uh, Kinesis works. Like, what would be some steps you would recommend?
You've got to get hands on, right? Because you can't you can't do this without just playing with it. Um, and the documentation is intense, right? So it's not always that obvious, but they do have structured learning paths. Um, yeah, I tend to sandbox environment. There's always a free tier, or majority of services have a free tier, so you don't
Uh-huh.
billing, you don't get charged, and that's great, right? Free learning is fantastic. So um, yeah, just get started, just do it.
I like that. And the free tier idea is a great thing because I think a lot of people want to get in there and try stuff and they don't realize, man, there's a lot of things on there you can do that are still free compared to paying for an
Yeah,
EC2 instance and paying for some other stuff.
yeah, absolutely. And even EC2 has a free tier, but it only lasts 12 months. And make sure you set up things like billing alerts just to
Uh-huh.
keep that stuff under control, just so you're aware and don't get caught out by a large bill.
All
That's
right.
definitely important.
Side question: have you ever been caught off by a large bill?
I haven't personally,
Uh-huh.
obviously. Um, I know of a few horror stories though. So, credentials getting leaked into things like GitHub,
Uh-huh.
and very, very quickly accounts get compromised. So people are scraping for that stuff. I don't know how, but um, you know, instances just being thrown up. My old company, I used to work with a few years ago. That one of my old teammates let me know. He's like, "Yeah, we got compromised," and within I don't know a couple of hours, there was like a 50 grand bill of some sort.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, super, and just Bitcoin mining and stuff was big at that time.
And I suppose maybe
Um,
you got some AWS keys, so you probably have some scripts already written to start setting up
yeah.
EC2 instances and other things to start mining
Oh, you're
Bitcoins
ready
for
to
you.
go. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sweet.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
A few hours of that, massive compute and whatever. And I think AWS realized there was an issue at the time and it let them off the bill, which was probably a good thing. But yeah, it can happen. Be very, very careful. Don't do it.
So
Don't
words of
put stuff in
wisdom to
GitHub.
everybody out there: keep your AWS secrets and your keys secret. Don't show them. Don't put
Yes.
them in code. Don't put them in code.
Yeah. Change
All
them
right.
often as well.
All right. Perfect. Time for the lightning round. So let's go through 10 questions. We'll just get your opinion on some stuff. Okay. Question one: do you like Mac, Windows, or Linux?
Mac boy.
Okay, Mac.
All
All right.
Mac.
Favorite programming language?
Python.
Python. Okay. Best CI/CD tool.
Used a lot of GitHub Actions lately. I really like it. So yeah, I'm all GitHub Actions.
Okay. Do you like comments in your code, or do you like the code is the documentation?
Comments. So many
Okay.
comments.
Yeah, people are
Yeah.
crazy when they say that about the code as documentation.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, fun one. So you're naming a function. Do you start with a verb or not? So if you're going to have something that gets cats, do you have your get cat function or is it just the cat function?
Yeah, get cat. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Favorite IDE?
I'm using VS Code. Been using that for a few years, and it's great. Yeah,
Okay.
very happy.
That's one of my faves too. Are you a crazy person and you use the light theme or do you use the dark theme?
The dark theme.
Okay, good, good.
Who uses the light theme?
I don't know. I know there are people out there because the theme exists. All right. Vim or Emacs?
Vim.
Okay.
Although I still don't know how to do things in it.
I get lost
I still
myself.
can't remember the commands.
Nice. Microservices or monolith?
That's tricky.
Ooh.
It depends. You can go too extreme. Oh, I've just got to choose, right?
Yeah.
You can go too extreme with microservices and it becomes a headache more than a monolith. So um, let's go microservices.
Okay. Okay. I'm waiting for someone to say monolith, but I liked your answer. Depends. It's a very principal engineer answer. And then
Yeah, yeah.
finally, spaces or tabs?
Spaces.
Spaces. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of stuff. I've asked you a lot of questions. Are there kind of anything you think that I missed that you kind of want to speaking to the people out there, probably younger engineers, middle level engineers that kind of want to bump up their careers or get into cloud computing? Anything else you want to add to them?
Not really. I mean, we've talked a lot about, I think, things that can help. Just get involved, like do things, especially if you're just starting out in the industry. Um, Things like personal projects are a really powerful way of showing you're good. we've offered people jobs from having a look at their GitHub repo. Don't need to interview them. I know what you're about. Equally, I've had CVs with a link to a GitHub and the code is just not working, or they've just like half done everything, and then you're like, oh, hold on. So it works both ways. So yeah, be committed, get things done, and really sort of push yourself in those early stages, and then as you progress, yeah, keep. We stress it a lot at Daemon, but your network is so important. So build relationships with people and maintain them and look after, make friends. Like, it's so important for your career long term.
On that note, do you want anybody to follow you on LinkedIn, or do you have any other social media accounts you want them to follow you on? I can put it up on the screen here.
Yeah, happily. Like jump on LinkedIn. If you're interested in mentoring, obviously, I do mentoring as well. So
Is there
happy to have a conversation about that.
is there a place
And
where
we'll
they
put
can
some
find you
links.
for mentoring, perhaps?
Yeah, Mentor Cruise is a website that I use. So this is where we obviously met. Um, but yeah, yeah, I'll send you the links. You can paste them.
Perfect. And last bit, anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to grandstand about before we end it?
All good for me.
All right. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time to go through this.
No worries. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on.